Cool.
Hey everybody, welcome back in. Everyone's jumping back in from lunch. Man, this crew, you guys look very sluggish after lunch.
It was a good lunch.
Yeah.
I mean, with all the pizza talk, we just had to go get the pizza.
Yeah, I mean, none of us ate pizza, but
I had a calzone.
Calzone, that's close.
Is it though?
I mean, it's kind of a pizza wrapped in on itself, right?
Yeah, that's right. It's like enclosed in its own dough.
I do like a good calzone. Austin, are you a calzone fan?
I do like calzones, but I rarely get to eat them. Usually it's just like a basic pizza.
Yeah.
All right, boys. How about calzone versus the stromboli?
Wow, what's
Man.
the difference there?
I think it's the ricotta cheese, right? Isn't that the main difference between a stromboli and a calzone?
Oh, that's true. I love ricotta, so I'm gonna go with that.
Oh, really?
calzone.
I'm the exact opposite.
You don't like it, huh?
Is the stromboli still shaped as like a triangle, or is it the shape
It's
different?
usually just like a loaf, kind of.
It's loaf, right?
But same idea. It's just, I don't know if there's a specific shape related to it or not, to be honest. Chat, what do you think?
Yeah. As you guys are jumping in, tell us calzone, stromboli. What's your choice? Actually, this is a good time to embarrass Lejo a little bit.
Oh my gosh.
We had,
amazing.
speaking of great questions, at lunch
There's never a bad question, guys.
Well,
There's no dumb questions, just dumb people that ask them.
on the menu was a chicken wing calzone, and he asked the lady.
Right, hold on. Let's look at Austin's face right there. That face right there explains why I had to ask the question.
I'm like, how much fried food can we fit?
He said to the lady, "Is that bone in or bone out?" And she looked at him like, and Mark and I are like, "Bro, bone in. It's a calzone. Like, what are you gonna eat a calzone with the bones inside?" So. To which he said,
Wild.
"I'm from India."
You never know.
Oh, it was a good time, though. It was a good laugh.
Oh my goodness.
Which, of course, then transitions our questions right into what are the go-to Super Bowl eats?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, what's everyone having for the Super Bowl party? Austin, you're a big KC fan. What are you doing? What's your plans?
Hopefully we're going to be eating some San Francisco sourdough bread.
Oh, okay. Okay, you've thought of that before, I can tell.
Do you have
I actually haven't. I just had sourdough on my sandwich that I made for lunch here at the house. So
That's awesome.
Do you have like a dipping sauce with the sourdough bread, or you just eat it by itself?
It was a joke. It was just a joke.
Oh, it's a joke.
They're going to be sour because they lost?
Oh, I thought it was actually a sourdough.
Oh.
What's a go-to Super Bowl snack for you, Austin?
Oh man, honestly, pizza or
Yeah.
barbecue.
Yeah, yeah.
Because the last few we've been in Kansas City, so it's like there's going to be some pizza there, and then you're going to get some good barbecue.
Yeah. Are chicken wings a thing there in Kansas City? Can you hear us?
Oh yeah, people love wings. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm not a big wings guy. Like,
Okay.
I know I'm kind of lame as far as that goes. I'm just like if they're bone in, it takes too much work to eat it. So I
Yeah.
don't want to work that hard to eat my food.
Yeah.
I'm just like,
Yeah,
No.
where we are right now is like close to Buffalo, so it's wing heaven. Everybody loves their wings, so. Well,
there really is a thing out there, buffalo wings.
Oh yeah.
massive, yeah, it's really really popular. So,
I'm a big fan of the pig in a blanket. I think it's just because it's like you know what you're getting. It's consistent every time. It's like a little
So you
croissant
want like
flake.
full,
What?
real snacks. That's a real snack.
Yeah.
That's not a meal food. That's like a real legit like snack
Yeah.
food.
Yeah, and I'm a big guy, I get it, but I feel like a giant when I'm eating. I'm just like,
that's completely a kid food
Yeah,
that you didn't grow out of.
right.
Oh, Jason says jalapeno poppers. That is my
Ooh.
favorite like appetizer
I
type
like that.
food.
I like that.
Yeah, I'm with it.
Who's dipping into the vegetable tray during the? Is that not the saddest? That's like the saddest little plate at a Super Bowl party. I feel like it's like it's still in perfect condition.
We
at
are
the end of the-
hosting some young adults at our house for a Super Bowl party, and my wife's like, "Should I get a veggie tray?" And I'm like, let's not. I was like, that's a waste of money for this party. It's not going to get,
Well, might not be the time for the baby. Right?
No, that's a different party, but not the Super Bowl party. So
If you're gonna go healthy, go with
I do like a good charcuterie.
yeah.
Yeah, no, that's nice. Or like throw some fruit in there. Like that's the healthy option, right? You can have some fruit.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to get started. I know there's still a bunch of people that are jumping on. Getting back to lunch is always a little bit of a struggle. So, but we want to respect you guys and make the most of the time that we have. So,
Well, hopefully
welcome
they've
back.
just been in a session and discussion, not direct. If they were still
Oh,
eating
yes.
lunch,
You're right.
then
You're absolutely right.
that was a good lunch.
That was a very good lunch. Yeah. So, I should say our first session back after a lunch break. So, yes, you're right. But this session was all about positioning yourself to improve as a leader and a follower. I wanted to start off, and before we get in, just a reminder, guys, if you've got questions, feel free to text on the number there. We'd love to hear them. If you want to put it in the chat, you can do the chat as well. I know Austin would love a chance to answer anything you guys have, any questions you have. So, but I want to start us off with a question that I had, Austin, for you. As one of the things that you talked about was the idea of identifying complacency in you and getting rid of it. And I wanted to ask you, you've had quite a few years now in different leadership roles. What do you think are some of the areas that we should be the most kind of aware of or concerned with, or potential pitfalls for us, areas of complacency in our lives as leaders? What are some of the maybe pitfalls, some of the traps that we could fall into? I'd just be curious in your experience what that looks like.
Yeah, I think the most glaring one, which we would probably all agree on, is that if we've ever gotten so busy that we've grown a little bit complacent with our devotional life, to me, that's like the most important time that we spend in our day should be with the Lord. So, like Rick DeBose at the national office, he always tells us that your most important moments of the day should take place before you have to show up to work at the national office. And so I think that needs to be the way that we, as leaders, spiritual leaders, we approach our day, approach our week. And I know for some people, their time with the Lord might be at night before they go to bed. I'm not saying it's got to be at first thing in the morning, but I think there's value in starting your day that way. But I also think that's one of the things that you see start to slip in a leader's life. When they start to only go to the Word when they're looking for their next sermon or their next teaching moment. And I just think that sets us up for disaster, because then obviously we're trying to deliver something that we don't have, right? We're trying to pull from a well that doesn't have any water in it. So I think that's one that for some reason, even though it's the most important, the devotional time, the time in prayer, that seems to be the first thing we sacrifice when we get busy. And we've all said, if we're too busy to pray, we're too busy. We're too busy to read our Bible, we are too busy. So I think that's an area for sure. I also think another area that maybe we're complacent in, but we don't recognize it as much, is in our relationships. So I'll pick on myself here for a minute. Last year, as I was preparing to host National Youth Conference there with the team, and my corner of the office, we're responsible for large aspects of National Youth Conference, like fine arts and things like that. So there's a lot of work to do with a handful of us trying to do that work. So it's easy to get busy. I got so busy doing the work and being on the road and traveling and preaching and things that I was almost too busy to even go and grab coffee with a friend, with a coworker, or too busy to go out to lunch and grab a meal. And so I looked back at that and I just started realizing I had grown complacent in my relationships with other people. And I wasn't investing the time that I needed to invest into those relationships. And those relationships, as I learned through, especially through my cancer journey, those relationships are more important than I ever thought that they were. And if we have not invested into those relationships, we're not going to have something to pull out of them when we really need people. So I think that's another thing, is relationally, are we growing complacent in our relationships? Because friendships, relationships with our family, our relationships with people we lead, any kind of relationship we're in, it's going to take time. It's going to take investment, right? It's going to take a sacrifice. And when we get complacent in that and we're not investing into those relationships, they weaken and weaken that difference. So I think relationally, that's an area that, because we can get so busy doing the work of the ministry, sometimes it's easy to sacrifice those healthy relationships, healthy friendships, and those iron sharpening iron relationships that we should have it's easy to sacrifice them and grow complacent in them, but something that we've got to watch out for.
That's good. That's good. I can also, and in reflecting back on my years of youth ministry or just ministry in general, like seasons of complacency were honestly sometimes seasons where things were going really, really well. Things were good in the ministry. And so like I had a tendency to go into autopilot in some of those seasons. And then when you do that, you begin to protect things that will keep you at that balance versus continuing to go after things, continue to innovate in the ministry based on what's going on right now. And then I would reflect back when I realized those were seasons where I wasn't either taking great care of myself because things were good, or I wasn't really being as intentional as I needed to with the relationships and with time and all those sorts of things. And so sometimes I had to be really aware of, okay, this is a season where I'm thankful for what I have, and instead of launching out of that and doing some harder things, I would kind of relax and let myself go complacent, which then the not surprisingly, the immediate following season was a hard season because I had not prepared in the good season for that transition.
Yeah, and I think it's important because we need to always challenge ourselves. And if we become complacent, we lose that ability to challenge ourselves. And I think in kids ministry world, like, there's always ebbs and flows. There's always culture shifts. There's generations that are constantly changing. Austin, like, question for you, something you mentioned, what do I need to add in? Is there strategies in adding in a creative element? We can't just do what we did 10 years ago, right? In kids ministry today, things are constantly changing. What are some things we can add in to have more of that creative vibe? We don't want to just create a fun environment for the sake of just having fun, but what are some things we can add in so that we're improving, growing in our leadership styles as we're serving these children?
Yeah, I think adding feedback loops, so adding opportunities for people to actually give feedback. And one thing we know is that kids and students will be very honest.
Yeah.
They'll just tell it like it is. And so one of the things that I think helps if we give feedback opportunities to the young people that we're ministering to, because they'll shoot straight with us, like, yeah, I didn't like this activity. It didn't connect well, or yeah, we didn't enjoy this specific event that we did. I didn't feel like it was one I could bring my friends to. I didn't feel like it actually served my friends where they were. So I think adding in some of those feedback loops, that's going to, at the very least, help us to see the areas where maybe we thought we hit the mark and we're like, oh, maybe I didn't hit the mark because they didn't bring their friends didn't get saved like I thought they did, or this wasn't connecting with the kids ministry like I thought that it was. So I think adding feedback loops is great. I think also using social media as a tool to learn from other ministries, but not compare ourselves to other ministries. I think that is wisdom, because I think there are a lot of great ideas out there. There are some of the most creative people in the world who are doing church ministry right now, and they're doing church in a way that would work really well in our context. But we do have to humble ourselves and be secure enough to go and look and say, what are they doing that we can actually replicate? Not because we're trying to compete, not because we're trying to copy, but hey, there are some things that we can learn. Maybe there's some creative ways we can engage students and children and young adults that we haven't been. What is this network doing, or what is that church doing? So I think using social media as well to be a great tool. It absolutely can be a great tool. It doesn't have to just bring anxiety. It doesn't have to just bring frustration and comparison. It can be something that we use to learn from. So I also think looking at what other ministries are doing through social media, and then I also think asking people for honest feedback, and by people I mean peers. What can I do better? How could I have done that differently? How do you think I could get better at this? And then maybe even asking the people above us who are our leaders, saying, what could I be doing better? Or what could I have done better on that message or on that teaching or in that series? That's something that I've started to do more and more. And maybe just because I'm getting a little bit older and getting a little bit more confident in who God's called me to be. But I want to try and be now more than ever asking, hey, how could I have done that better? How could I have delivered that content better? How could I have set up that event better? Because now I know the difference that when someone's critiquing it, they're not attacking me. They're just critiquing something that we've built. So I think, getting feedback from the people that we lead, but then also asking for feedback from people who are above us and our peer as well.
That's good. In the area of this is an area about growth, and obviously we can talk about certain competencies that leaders have. But one of the questions that came in from the chat is specifically related to spiritual gifts. Recommendations or advice as it relates to identifying your spiritual gifts, how to grow and develop your spiritual gifts, even to some degree, like working with kids and working with youth and young adults. How do we grow in our spiritual gifts, but then also not disrupt the ministries that we're leading? And you know, I just curious to hear your thoughts. I don't want to bait the question at all, but just your thoughts there.
There are some spiritual gifts tests that we can take. And I'm sure that we can probably, through the network here, provide a link to some spiritual gift tests that you can take to help identify some of the gifts that are in your life. And many of us that are watching this and tuning in are part of today, we probably already know what some of our spiritual gifts are, and we've had leaders in our life confirm that in us. And as far as getting more acclimated to those gifts, I think that unless we get reps, unless we get practice, we're not going to get better. It's impossible to get better at something without practice. So one thing that I encourage executive leaders to do is let your young leaders run. Give them an opportunity. Let them preach. Let them teach. Let them make some mistakes. I had to get a lot of reps before I even found my voice as a communicator. And one of the things that my dad, as my pastor, so graciously did is he gave me the opportunity, right? And so I think that not all of us are in the same context, and not all of us are given the same opportunities, but my dad gave me plenty of opportunities to fail, and fail I did. I made some massive mistakes, and he told me about some of them and reminded me, hey, this is not the way we do things. But I had the reps, and I couldn't get better unless I had practice. And so I think if you're serving in a ministry under a leader, maybe they're aware of your spiritual gifts, they're aware of the gifts that God's put in you, or some dreams God's put in your heart. I would say start by going to your leader and maybe just expressing, hey, here are some things that I sense God has put into me. I sense God wants me to grow in. Can you help me grow in these areas? And find a way between yourself and your leader that you can start to use that gift in the context of your church, of your gathering, of your ministry, because then you'll be using it in a healthy way with spiritual oversight to provide some guide rails for you to correct when correction is needed. Right? None of us should just be going off rogue. The gifts God's given us, it has to be guided by spiritual leaders in our life. And so I think starting by going to your leader and helping them or having them help you process through that and grow through that, I think that's going to be the best option for anyone, because then you're not just going rogue on your own, and you have someone who's experienced, who's helping you walk that stuff out. And then I also think that we do need to actually be praying about our gifts, and don't just look at gifts that someone else has and be like, that's the gift I want. So that's the gift God gave me. Yeah. But really be praying, Lord, what have you put inside of me? Like, when's the last time we prayed, Holy Spirit, help me recognize a gift that you put inside of me? Help me effectively use a gift that you put inside of me. Help me effectively give a timely word to someone, a word of knowledge. I think we should make our spiritual gifts a part of our prayer life as well. That's great. Asking God to anoint us for specific moments.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. And even thinking in the context of a team, like maybe even prayerfully consider where are there currently vacancies in some of the gifts. Maybe we have a lot of people who are operating in some other areas or are gifted in these areas. Lord, use me in an area where somebody on the team isn't currently. Or God, bring someone into the team who is strong in this area and gifting. And at least my understanding scripturally of the spiritual gifts, they are body edifying things, right? And so to your point earlier too, as it relates to this idea of having accountability, like if you're practicing some of these things, bring other leaders along with you, even if just to be physically present. Because there's some intense moments that can take place, whether it's at an altar or, if you've got a word that you want to share that you feel like God is saying something to me, it never hurts to have an extra set of ears around and an extra set of accountability. Because, little Timmy's going to go tell his mom what somebody just shared with him, and then it may or may not go well. And so when it needs to be addressed later, like, hey, I had Jared along with me, this is how he interpreted things like that, it can only bring health to the situation. So an area of recommendation there as well.
There's a good book I would recommend. It's called Clear the Stage by Scott Wilson. Some of you are probably familiar with it. It's a book that was written probably 10 to 15 years ago. And basically it's about a pastor, pretty well-known pastor in the Assemblies of God in the state of Texas, who realized he hadn't been allowing the Holy Spirit to move in his Sunday morning services. He sensed that God wanted to move in unique ways in their services, and they were very organized, very strategic with their service planning schedule, and he had to kind of throw all that out the window and let God do what he wanted to do. But in that book, he offers some really great advice on how to allow the Spirit to move and allow the spiritual gifts to be used in gatherings and in services, but in a healthy, God-honoring way. And so it's called Clear the Stage. I think it's a really good book for anyone who's curious about the gifts of the Spirit and the moving of the Spirit and spiritual gifts as it pertains to those gifts operating in church services and gatherings. Just a little side note there. It's a great resource.
It's great.
You know, one thing that you shared was fall in love with disciplines. And I'm piggyback on this idea of where you said sometimes we can get so insecure based on feedback we may get, or we may feel that criticism and we may, have that offensive feeling. How do we fight through falling in love with the disciplines to stay the course versus feeling that insecurity, if you will, and to have that leadership grit that we need at times to continue to carry what God's commissioned us to do?
Yeah, I think one question that we have to ask ourselves, which this sounds very like sports-ish and coachy, but I had a coach who one time just asked a group of us, he said, how good do you want to be? How good do you actually want to be? Because if you don't really want to be great, then you're definitely not going to be, first of all, and you're not going to do the work that it takes here in practices and gatherings to get there. And so one of the things that I've tried to ask myself time and time again is how effective do I really want to be at fulfilling the call of God in my life? Do I really want to be effective? Because if I really want to be effective and I don't just want to be liked or popular, then I will be open to the feedback of people who I trust, not just random people and not just angry parents on a Facebook page, but people who I really trust. How effective do I want to be, and will I let them speak into my life? And sometimes when you do that, it means, okay, I'm going to have to change some of my disciplines. I'm going to have to do things a little bit differently if I want to reach the level of effectiveness I need to reach in this season. And so, again, something I've tried to do a lot more in the last couple of years is just go to people and say, hey, what could I have done differently? Even if it's something I feel like I'm good at. Let's just say it's leading altars at a youth camp. I've gone to other people and I'd say, hey, what would you have done differently? How could I have done that better? And I have to be open to the answer. And if that means I need to make some adjustments, then so be it. But I think once we get over that hump of not taking everything personally, not taking feedback personally, it makes it a whole lot easier to say, hey, how can I get better? How can I serve you better, serve the students better, serve the children better? And so I think making that a discipline in and of itself, of just asking, hey, what could I have done better? How could I serve better? How could I fulfill the mission better this week? That's a huge part of improving.
It's good.
I love that. One of the questions that came in, Austin, is a question about for empowering leaders, and maybe this is a question geared towards maybe if you're the point leader in your group. And the question was along the lines of, how do we empower leaders so they can continue to grow themselves, but also being mindful of potential burnout, just pace of life? How do we do that in that maintaining that balance for our leaders, encouraging them to keep moving forward, but also avoiding kind of burnout in ministry?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, they have to be able to trust us, right? The people we're leading, whether they're kids, whether they're students, young adults, or whether they're leaders in those ministries, whoever it is that we're leading, they've got to be able to trust us. Because if they can't trust us, there's no way they're going to be honest with us and tell us if there actually is an issue or if they're facing burnout. I've never been honest with a leader whom I do not trust.
That's right.
I'm be somewhat honest. I'm not going to lie to them, but I'm not going to maybe go to them with a concern that I have as often as I would with somebody else. I've served under some great leaders. I felt like I could go sit in their office and be honest with them, and I don't have to worry if my role or my job or my position is on the line. I trust them, and I can be really honest with them and say, this is how I'm feeling right now. So if the people we're leading don't trust us, first of all, they're not going to tell us even if they are feeling that way. That's number one.
Yeah.
We got to make sure they trust us, and that only comes from investment, time, right? Showing that we care, demonstrating that we care gains trust. But the other thing is that we do have to offer communication regularly, not just at gatherings, not just at a service right before service is about to start and you're like, hey, how you doing? You doing good? Great. But you're focused on your sermon, and so you're just kind of blowing past them, getting ready for the service. But real communication that takes place maybe during the week, maybe a text message leads to a conversation, leads to us going to get coffee and spend some time together. So I think regular communication, first trust, and regular communication. In those communication moments, they're going to let us know that, hey, I'm getting kind of tired. I'm feeling kind of burned out. I think if we don't leave any room for that feedback and communication, then we probably aren't going to get it. Most people aren't just going to text their leader out of nowhere, hey, I'm feeling burned out. So let's initiate it. Let's take the seat of leadership and give the opportunity. Hey, how are you? Really, how are you doing? Ask some questions. How do you feel about your schedule? How do you feel about your involvement? How do you feel about your role? One question that I've asked leaders who served under me is there anything I need to know that I don't know right now? Is there anything I need to know? And that gives them an opportunity to either share something that they know is going on or share something personally that they're dealing with. So I think giving opportunities for communication, but then also having the trust ahead of time is huge.
That's awesome. We've got one final question that just came in. I think it's a really good one. I'm gonna have Mark ask it because a lot of our leaders on this call and participating in this have they're multifaceted roles. They're doing youth. They're involved in kids. They're running the soundboard or something like that. So I think this is a really good question for us to wrap up this session with.
Sure, yeah. So the question is kind of related to balance. As a volunteer leader, what are some recommendations that you can give as it relates to establishing healthy boundaries, healthy balance, so that you don't burn out, 6 months into the process and then disappear from all of those responsibilities. What advice would you have there?
Especially, I think, when you're carrying multiple roles and responsibilities
which I think a lot of our leaders that are listening today, they may be involved in kids ministries as well as youth ministries, and probably something on a Sunday morning, hospitality teams, worship teams, things like that. Because we all know that youth and kids ministry leaders are the most talented people in the church.
Oh yes, of course, and young adult leaders. Yes.
Oh yeah.
They just get to have all the fun without any permission slips or dealing with the hassle of parents. So
right.
That's really the best. But sorry, Austin, take it away.
Yeah. No, I think one of the things that we have to remember, which is really difficult for those of us who want to achieve, really difficult for those of us who want to demonstrate to our leaders that we're hard workers, that we're there to serve, that we're down for whatever the mission, whatever it takes, we're going to do it. Regardless, we have to be willing to say no sometimes. We have to be willing to say no. I talked to a leader this week. They were serving at a large church, a church that is doing a lot for the kingdom. I mean, just pretty remarkable what's happening at this church. And they're no longer on staff. And it's a great church, phenomenal church. They're no longer on staff at this church. And there was just a weight that was almost like not on them. And I was like, hey, you good? You seem great. You seem like everything is just, you're like, wow, you're almost like glowing, like what's going on? And the person was like, honestly, I finally realized that I could say no. So that I spent years serving and I didn't say no, even though I could have. No one at the church was making me say yes to everything that I was good at or making me say yes to everything I physically could do, right? They were giving me the option to say no, I just never did. And it exhausted me. And so to look at a leader who I really respect, who's very, very good at what they do, and to see that in them and hear them say, I wish I would have said no more often, to me, that immediately spoke to me. And I thought, just because I can doesn't mean I should do something. Just because I'm gifted or skilled in a certain area and my church needs it doesn't mean I have to be the one to do it. Right? The church is not ours, it is the Lord's, and he will build his church. The gates of hell will not prevail against it. And that means that sometimes it's us saying no, and it's opening up an opportunity for somebody else to say yes and do the thing. So I think sometimes we just got to learn to say no. That just because we can do all of these different things doesn't mean that we need to. And then I also think that we need to allow, again, someone else to speak into our situation as it pertains to balance. For me, my person is my wife, and she is pretty direct when she knows that, okay, your work, life, family, all this is getting hectic. There's too much work, too much time away. she'll be really direct with me. I don't have to wonder what she's thinking. She's super direct. So whether or not you're married, whether you're single, whichever your situation, have someone in your life who can, from the outside looking in, say, hey, I understand all of these different elements that are at play, but you should adjust this or you should do that. And I'm not talking about having a friend outside the church who's disgruntled with the church anyways, because they're always going to tell you to serve less. But I'm talking about having somebody who is on the outside looking in, but really understands your heart and the heart to build the church, have them speak into it. And then I also think we've got to prioritize, or we've got to decide what are the things that only I can do? What are the things that I have to do? That I've signed on the dotted line saying, I'm going to do these 4 things. I have to get these things done as a part of my role. The other things, I should get them done. I wish I could get them done. But what are the things that only I can do? And prioritize those, right? What are the things that we actually have to answer for? In your children's ministry, what are the things you actually have to answer for? Your youth ministry, what do you actually have to answer for? So figuring out some of those non-negotiables as well is a huge help, because then it eliminates some of the other clutter off the plate and you realize, oh, I really don't need to do these 3 other things. I just was doing them because I wanted to.
I love that, man. That's really good, really helpful, and encouraging too for any leaders who are struggling with that. So thank you so much. We're going to transition now, guys, to session 4. So I want to encourage you to go find video 4 for session 4, and all about positioning yourself to be in need of a miracle. And so we're going to be back here for our live Q&A at 3 p.m. We'll be live a little early if you want to jump on early, but check out that video, have a great discussion, and we look forward to seeing you guys back here at 3 p.m. All right? Thanks.